Well, Florida has just gone through a really hard freeze, and this is one of my first flowers to be blooming, and I'm so grateful to have it. And I know the bumblebees are grateful to have some nectar. This is a Lyreleaf Sage. These are the flowers. I'll show you the leaves in a minute. Lyreleaf Sage is a perennial wildflower with blue flowers. It grows to a height of about 2 feet when in bloom. When not in bloom, the plant just has basal leaves, which are in a rosette of leaves at the ground level. In nature, Lyreleaf Sage is found in thickets, disturbed sites, and roadsides. It's native to the southeastern United States. In the home landscape, it can be grown in full sun to part shade, with average moisture, and once established, it doesn't require any care at all. If you don't collect the seeds, the plants will spread out via new plants from the seeds that you've left. It's a good candidate for sparse places in the landscape that don't do well with grass or other plants. I find it nice to make swaths of it along borders and natural areas in my green space. Here's another new flower stalk. Lyreleaf Sage is really easy to transplant. I have a still shot I'll show you of what the roots look like. When you transplant it, just make sure you cut off the flower stalks. That gives the roots more energy. If you leave the flower stalks, then the poor plant keeps trying to keep the flower alive, and you'll probably have less success in keeping it growing. I'll give you some tips on identifying the plant before it starts to bloom. Okay, well, I'm always telling you guys to learn what these plants look like before they're blooming. So this is Lyreleaf Sage. These are the basal leaves that come up at ground level. This is like the second week of March, so they start growing and getting a little more lush than they had been in the winter. Sometimes they kind of like the flea bane, they kind of like almost go away, and you don't really notice them until mid-March, beginning of April. So this is what they look like. I'm going to try to find a better one. A lot of times they have this really pretty purple streak in the leaves. But Lyreleaf Sage is another really great one to seed. And it gets beautiful blue flowers. The bees absolutely love it. Let me see if I can find a more distinct leaf. None of these really have the purple color. Okay, that one does. So a lot of times they'll have this deep purple, magenta color on them, maroon. So these are Lyreleaf Sage plants coming up in the middle of my walkway. So I will dig them up and move them to another spot, just because I don't want them to keep getting trampled and go to waste. And if I move them to their own location, then they'll be able to flower. So they tend to do this a lot. You get volunteers all throughout your landscape. They're super easy to transplant. This is a spot off the side of my walking path around my container plants. And I'd like to move the Lyreleaf Sage over here. So there's quite a few of them. Whenever I find one in the path, like I just showed you, I move them over here. This is the other side of container plant row where I put Lyreleaf Sage plants that come up in my walkway. Lyreleaf sage is a great plant for pollinators, especially bumblebees. Songbirds and small mammals will eat the flower buds and the seeds. So it's a really nice wildlife plant since it's so easy to grow and you can grow it pretty much anywhere. It does pretty well underneath the shade of oak trees and things like that. It's easy to propagate from seed transplants. Generally, I just do transplants because they come up all over my yard. When you transplant, be sure to remove the flower stalk. That helps the plant recover more quickly. It can focus on its roots rather than keeping the flower alive. So this is what the roots look like. And as you can see, the stems down toward the roots have a nice maroon color. Now these will transplant really well, just like this. Okay, this is a good one. An example of the maroon on the leaves. And that's usually a very easiest distinguishing feature. Easy distinguishing feature, but oddly enough, most of mine don't have that. But the last place I lived, all of them had it. So I'm not sure what that's about. But so they come up by these little basal leaves that are completely flat against the ground. And then they send up these beautiful blue flower stalks. And they bloom for months and months until it gets really, really hot. Actually, they're still blooming in the summer. So we just had a really heavy freeze, and they're one of the first things that bounced back. But they transplant really well, they reseed really well, they direct sow seed very well. So if you have an area that's kind of sparse in grass, this is a good candidate for that. This area is mostly Florida batony, but it does have some Lyreleaf Sage coming up. There's a really pretty flower stalk. And this one has the maroon markings on the leaves. So that's a really good way to identify them, especially for beginners. And this guy just produced some flowers, and these are the seed stalks. Well, it's not wanting to cooperate, but let me see if I can get it to focus. There we go. So those are the seed pods after the flowers have been pollinated. And they ripen, as I said, from the bottom up, so the bottom set will start turning brown, and when it does, that's the time to collect it. Here are the seed pods once they turn brown. Now this doesn't have the complete seed or flower stalk because I've been deadheading these so they bloom more often. But that's what the brown seed pods look like. And when they start to turn brown, then they start drying out, and then the seeds will fall. So try to get them before the entire stalk turns brown. Well, I hope you get a chance to try Lyreleaf Sage in your green space and your Florida plant gardening. Enjoy this beauty waving in the breeze.